What's up, everybody? Welcome to the weekend roundup on this Labor Day weekend. Even with the holiday, too much happened across the soccer universe this weekend to not talk about it and not do this weekend roundup. So, here we are going to make it fairly quick, but three games in particular I want to highlight here. First, of course, Arsenal Manchester United. United walk away with a 3-1 win. United started the game fairly brightly, but it was Arsenal who thought they had gone ahead. Gabriel Martinelli, phenomenal finish, really good, quick build up to the goal. Ultimately, it gets taken away due to a foul in the build up on Martin Odegaard. This week was very strange in terms of VAR across the Premier League. It seemed as if we were heading in the direction where we were actually taking clear and obvious error to mean what those words actually mean. And then you had this one, and the one in the Newcastle Crystal Palace game, and the one in the West Ham Chelsea game, all of which went back to the VARs being used to re-referee things. For the Odegaard situation in particular, is it a foul? Yeah, it probably is. Is it a clear and obvious error that should have taken a goal away by my very stringent literal definition? Not to me. If this was last season or even a few weeks ago, I would probably say that gets called back most of the time. But it seems like we're really trying to do this clear and obvious thing the way it's intended to and follow what the words actually mean, which I'm all for. Except for this week, and this weekend in particular, the Premier League just went in the entire opposite direction. Really unfortunate break for Arsenal. And so then Antony comes in on his United debut, puts the Red Devils ahead. Bukayo Saka equalizes in the second half. Marcus Rashford then gets United level, seals the deal with a third goal, and all of a sudden it's 3-1. United side of this first. This was a massive win. It is a huge deal to get to 4 Premier League wins in a row, and the way they've turned this thing around is really impressive. You got to give Erik ten Hag a lot of credit. They were lethal on the counterattack, which is how they've had these purple patches in this overall really challenging period of their history. Right? Don't forget, right when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer took over, the run they made at the end of the COVID season in the summer after the postponement was done and we were back playing behind closed doors with no fans, when they pushed back to get into the Champions League. There have been stretches of 10-15 games where United have looked really, really good. Of course, we're only at 4 here. And the concern I have, that has been the concern I've had in the past, is what happens when a team actually gives United the ball and says, here, go break us down. Because this is not an Erik ten Hag team yet. They are nowhere near dominant enough in possession. He doesn't want to play on the counter, but that's the way things are working right now. And this group of players, now that Marcus Rashford and Jadon Sancho are back in form and back confident, and that is a massive deal that cannot be overlooked, this team is built to play on the counter. And so it's not surprising that some of these notable wins and these big moments in this overall disappointing stretch have come against Manchester City, Arsenal, PSG, right? Some of these other big teams that are going to allow Manchester United to play on the counter. And where the disappointments come? Against the teams that are going to sit there and give you the ball. That's the part of this I still need to see change. That being said, I simply refuse to believe Manchester United are back to being Manchester United until they actually are, and they do this for an entire season. But this is the closest I've gotten to buying what I've seen. And it's because there are so many new pieces and it's working. I talk about this all the time, but for me to believe something has changed, I need to have something tangible to point to. I will not believe that the same group of players in the same culture are going to be able to completely change the trajectory of this club. But a new center back pairing that's playing really well, a new approach to the midfield with Christian Eriksen playing really, really well and sort of pulling the strings behind Bruno Fernandes, and the reemergence of Marcus Rashford and Jadon Sancho, and the arrival of Antony, and if Casemiro can sort of get himself going. It hasn't been great so far in his little cameos, but if he can become Casemiro for this team, new manager, all of a sudden, there is something to identify and say, here's why this Manchester United team is different. And if nothing else, United fans have hope and reason to believe this might actually be real. And that was the first step, because after that Brentford game, I said the scariest part of this is, what hope do you have? What are you pointing to say this is why I think things can get better? Now you are seeing it. This is a very good team when it sort of all clicks. They've done this before, though. I'm not getting fooled. I'm open to the possibility that if this is 100% legit and they're going to make the top 4 this season, and all of a sudden we are in a new era of Manchester United. But I am not going there. After 4 games, Southampton wasn't particularly great. 2 of these were at home. They also weren't particularly phenomenal against Leicester, and Leicester is a complete mess right now. But they played well against Liverpool. They played well against Arsenal. There are actually players in attack doing things and creating chances. You're seeing it slowly come together. And it is a testament to Erik ten Hag and these players that after the way this thing started, they were able to turn it around this quickly and now find themselves 4 straight wins near the top of the table, and we're having a completely different conversation about United. I'm just not willing to go all in on this yet. And I won't be if they do this for another 10 games. I need to see it throughout an entire season, and I need to see it week in and week out against teams that aren't going to let them beat them on the counter. Because that's where the biggest issues have come for United in the past few seasons. On the Arsenal side of this, it was a good performance. Let's not give Manchester United their credit, but let's not act like this is some kind of reckoning for Arsenal. Yes, they lost on the road to the first really good team they played. So what? They still showed up in the game. They did not get played off the field by any stretch of the imagination. Mikel Arteta is probably feeling like they should have had a 2-1 lead at some point here, and that would have completely changed things. This performance reinforced my belief they are 100% legit, are going to be one of the top 4 teams, and are still probably the team most likely to give Manchester City a title challenge. I'm not convinced they're going to, but Liverpool dropped more points in the Merseyside derby this weekend. It's not going to be Liverpool. So I'm going to say it's Arsenal. But the one concern here I want to highlight, and one of the big differences between the way Arsenal set up in this game and the way Manchester United set up and the squads they have, is that Martin Odegaard was the only dynamic midfielder in that starting lineup. Now, not having Thomas Partey hurts in this conversation a little bit, but even he is not really what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the difference between having Martin Odegaard need to do everything sort of creatively from a midfield perspective, as opposed to having Christian Eriksen and Bruno Fernandes, both of whom were really good in this game. Christian Eriksen cut him open time and time again, and some of those balls went to Bruno Fernandes, who then finished it off by making that next pass. If there's one hole I'm going to poke in this Arsenal team, and Emile Smith-Rowe gives you some of this, although he's more of a goal scorer than a creator, And he and Odegaard don't play together, at least in a starting lineup. The hole I'm going to poke is Martin Odegaard is tasked with doing an awful lot creatively. They're still a big-time midfielder short for me, which is where a Yuri Tillmans would be perfect. You sort of ask him to do many of the things Christian Eriksen's doing for Manchester United. Put him behind Odegaard and let those two guys run the show. Obviously, they didn't get that transfer over the line. We'll see what happens as Tillman's contract expires. But that is the one piece Arsenal is still missing for me. Over to Italy and the Milan derby. It is ultimately a 3-2 win for AC Milan, although Marcelo Brozovic put Inter up early, kind of out of nothing. But then Rafael Leao happened, and that was kind of that. He was phenomenal last season. He was the most valuable player on that AC Milan team, and he picked up right where he left off at the start of this season. And Dzeko does make it 3-2 in the 67th minute, so Inter have time, and they do push late to get an equalizer, just ultimately are unsuccessful. AC Milan were 100% the better team in this game. I really want to focus more on the Inter side of this, though, because to me, AC Milan kind of speak for themselves. Rafael Leao was phenomenal. And Olivier Giroud also was really instrumental in the goals they scored. They had control of this game for the most part, except for a 15 or so minute stretch where Inter were really pushing after Dzeko got that goal to make it 3-2. But this is the second really good team Inter have played, and the second time they have gotten ambushed for large portions of the game and just act like they have no solutions whatsoever when another team really starts dominating proceedings and asserts their control on a game. Happened against Lazio and it happened against AC Milan. And all of a sudden the floodgates kind of open and that scoreline turns really quickly. This is a team that I picked to win Serie A along with many other people, and a team that needs to show up in the Champions League. And all of a sudden, everybody's dropping points in Serie A, so that is certainly still within their grasp. But you already lost a Milan derby, and now you're starting a Champions League group with Bayern and Barcelona. And by the way, Bayern is first up. And you probably aren't going to have Lukaku. But the bigger point here is they need to figure this out and fast. They can survive a slow start in Serie A because everybody is starting slow. But this is really concerning that they entire halves, 30-minute stretches, they just seem to have no answers. And so if you start poorly in the Champions League, you're looking at a Europa League spot because Bayern and Barca are two of the 10 best teams in the world, and right now Inter Milan aren't. If it was another Champions League group, they would have time to kind of build all of this and get this stuff straightened out, but they don't. That was my big takeaway from this game. AC Milan were the better team, which doesn't mean all that much in the grand scheme of Serie A because they held serve at home. That's what you have to do. They're defending champions. They showed up. They had the best player on the field, who's probably the best player in the league, in Rafael Leao. But the way this played out raises some major red flags for me concerning the Inter side of things. And then the other thing I want to mention real quickly here, Bayern dropped points again, this time to Union Berlin. And it was not a total onslaught like the Gladbach game where Gladbach were holding on for dear life and got a goal basically gifted to them by Bayern and didn't do anything else offensively. Union Berlin, A, were better going forward than Gladbach were. But B, actually found a way to slow Bayern down. This was not a 90-minute assault on the Union Berlin goal. Which first and foremost is a credit to Union Berlin. They were really good. They have been really good this season. They are scoring goals, and defensively they're holding up. You see the work rate, the effort, the togetherness. It is a sight to behold. Bravo to Union Berlin first and foremost. And this is what it looks like when Bayern come up against a well-organized defensive team. And to a certain extent, Gladbach falls into this category, but they were so much better and created so many chances. I struggle to put that game into the same category as this one. Because what I said from the beginning was, yeah, they're going to blow some teams out with 5 and 6 goal performances, but they're also going to have some games where that doesn't happen. Whether it's because they just can't get the ball to go into the net like Gladbach, or because there are some teams in this league capable of really bothering them. And that's where you need that difference maker at striker to sort of take that half chance and turn it into a goal. And that's what Robert Lewandowski makes his living doing. And they don't have that player right now. You know, Sadio Mane's been good. He's also gotten, I think it's something like 5 goals called back for offside. Those little margins. And so now, yes, we're still really early, but guess who's 1 point ahead of Bayern in the table? Yeah, Borussia Dortmund. Everybody wanted to declare this league over when Bayern obliterated Eintracht Frankfurt. And I said, hold on a second. I want to see what Dortmund have to say about this. And then Dortmund said, yeah, we're not really up for the challenge. And Bayern said, well, we'll give it to you anyway by dropping 4 points here over 2 weeks. I am not sold on Dortmund whatsoever. I've been disappointed in them so far. But by and large, except for the collapse against Werder Bremen, they are finding ways to collect wins. And if they can just keep pace, stay within striking distance, they will not win this league. And I've said this before. They will not win this league unless they can get those head-to-head points against Bayern and turn a loss and a draw or a loss and a win into a win and a draw. If that doesn't happen, if Bayern win the season series head-to-head, Bayern are going to win the league. But you are seeing the vulnerabilities of this Bayern team. Don't be fooled when they beat somebody 6-1. They're going to do that sometimes. They're going to get some 3-0s in there. They are simply much better than most of the teams in this league. But there are a handful. Gladbach, Union Berlin, Mainz have been good so far. Freiburg have been good so far. And of course, Dortmund have the talent to actually play with them. They're going to give Bayern some challenges. They're going to miss Lewandowski. Now, everybody is kind of struggling to a certain extent at this point. Across, Manchester City dropped more points this week. PSG are by and large fine. Real Madrid have looked pretty good so far. But nobody is really wowing you. And so Bayern are still very much up there in terms of best team in the world. But I need to see more to convince me when those margins get really thin. Champions League semifinals. Potentially a Bundesliga race. That this group of players has enough to overcome what Robert Lewandowski brought. It's not just the goals. They're going to score a bunch of goals. They already have. It's his ability to be clinical and ruthless in front of the net. That, to me, Sadio Mane isn't that player. And I'm not sure they have that player. And so there is a chance, albeit a slim one, it really comes back to haunt them. And there's a better than slim chance it comes back to haunt them in the Champions League once we get to the business end and all of these teams are comparable skill-wise. So just something to keep an eye on. I just wanted to point out Borussia Dortmund are ahead of Bayern Munich right now. Dortmund have not been convincing at all. But here we are as Bayern come up against a really good Union Berlin team and can't come away with the 3 points. Bravo Union Berlin, like I said, I'm not overly worried about Bayern. I just think this Bayern team is somewhat flawed. And it's very fair to wonder what they're going to look like in a post-Robert Lewandowski world. And it's fair to wonder whether they would have gotten 3 points in at least one of these 2 games if Lewandowski was still on that team. So that is all we've got for the weekend roundup. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube and check out all of the writing I'm doing. Also, Substack, touchlinetalk.substack.com, and you can also find it on Medium now. Very excited about that, so be sure to check those out, and we'll see you next time.